is from Mondoweiss. The true lesson of October 7 is that Israel cannot be reformed. The years since October 7 has shown us that Israel can neither be accommodated nor reformed. It must be dismantled, and Zionism must be brought to an end. Only this will finally alleviate the Palestinians' terrible ordeal over the past 76 years.
Press people for 76 years and then bitch when they rise up. Fucking pussies. As we come up to the first anniversary of Israel's war on Gaza, I think back to 1948, when Israel was first created. Our family lived in Jerusalem, where I was born. But like most of Palestinians' population, we were forced out of our homes in 1948 to make room for the state of Israel being created in our place. Learning to live in exile, people's one comfort was the thought that Israel would not last. Such gross injustice could not prevail, they said, and the ragtag collection of immigrants who came to Palestine from a variety of countries and were artificially assembled into something they called a state would soon return to the places from which they came. Colonizers don't leave. Never happened. And Israel has grown from strength to strength ever since. Today, it rules the whole of historic Palestine from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. From the river to the sea, Palestine be free. It has loyal, even fanatical supporters throughout Europe, and it dominates the US political system. For 76 years, it has worked to subdue the Middle East region, aiming to leave not a single foe capable of vanquishing it. We're currently seeing it trying to disable its longtime enemies, Hezbollah and Iran. Through its weaponization of anti-Semitism, it cleverly keeps the rest of the world at bay. In Palestine, Israel completely controls Gaza and the West Bank. Palestinian resistance to these outrages has flared up many times, always easily managed by Israel. With a pacified Palestinian population unable to fight its occupier, the situation over time had become comfortable for Israel and its Western backers, including many Arab states wanting a quiet life. 1 year ago, on October 7th, this cozy setup came crashing down. It is a date that will go down in history as the day when the Middle East and perhaps the world changed for good. Hamas broke out of the giant prison that is Gaza and attacked Israel on its own soil. Vilified as theism by Israel and its friends, it was, in fact, a bid for freedom and autonomy familiar to all prisoners who long for release. Whether those Hamas fighters knew it or not, their actions that day exposed the edifice of lies, hypocrisy, and ruthless tyranny Israel and its Western allies have used to oppress Palestinians since Israel's creation. Creation. As in Palestine was already there. As in Israel are occupiers. As in they are not real. Israel's not a real state. Is not real. Is not real. The genocidal war is not real is waging on Gaza and the West Bank since October 7th has only rammed this exposure home. For all those who liked to see Israel as a liberal democracy, it has been revealed as a nasty British colonizer with fascist tendencies. For those who thought that Israel was a military superpower no one could defeat, it's shown itself incapable of fighting a single war without US arms and funding. And most of all, for anyone who saw Zionism as a moral project, justifying Israel's creation as a light unto the nations, its inhumane conduct towards the Palestinians since October 7th should have abolished any notion of morality applicable to Israel. It was not and is not news that Israel enjoyed massive US and Western support from the start. But October 7th showed us how far and how deep it went. Israel's genocide in Gaza, the multiple atrocities it has committed against civilians, especially children, and the indescribable cruelty of its soldiers, all brazenly conducted in broad daylight, have been unashamedly tolerated and aided by the West. Not a single Israeli outrage has earned Western condemnation. And the same is now true of Israel's recent assault on Lebanon. The mass T attack, Israeli manipulated pagers and walkie-talkies on September 17th, killed 37 and injured 3,000 people, mostly in Beirut. Relentless Israeli bombings and assassinations of Hezbollah leaders have raised the number of Lebanese dead and wounded to many thousands, with 1 million people displaced from their homes. Israel's ground invasion of Lebanese territory on October 1st in pursuit of Hezbollah has depopulated villages and destroyed the infrastructure with reported US approval. It's disgusting. They don't have my approval. Having disabled Hezbollah, they didn't disable Hezbollah. Having thought to disable Hezbollah, as Israel imagines it will do, its next target is Iran, where it aims to draw the US into a war on its behalf. Its fantasy is to smite its enemies once and for all in order to obtain hegemony over a new Middle East, one reconfigured as a series of defeated states dominated by Israel and wholly subservient to the West. The West is subservient to Israel. Let's just kind of throw that fucking clarification in there. Whether any of this can happen is unknown, but one thing is certain. There's no place for an apartheid, genocidal, supremacist state like Israel in the Middle East or anywhere else in the world. Since its inception, it has been violent, bellicose, and expansionists focused of regional instability. It has inflicted untold misery on countless generations of Palestinians and other Arabs and plans for more to come. When the Arab states, which have fought against the formation of Israel in 1948, eventually came to accept its presence in the region after 1967, Israel rejected every peaceful approach they made. At the end of September, Jordan's foreign minister offered a guarantee of Israel's security from Arab and Islamic countries, which Israel ignored. The truth is, Israel can neither be accommodated nor reformed. It must be dismantled. As a state, its policies and system of government discarded, and its citizens set free to learn how to live with others on a basis of cooperation and equality. Zionism, which has been at the core of Israel's existence as an exclusivist supremacist ideology, will also have to end. If that were to happen, and the Palestinians regain their homeland to live normal lives, it'd finally alleviate their terrible ordeal over 76 years. And in that lies the true lesson of October 7th. October 7th was people rising up after 76 years of essential slavery. Do you understand in that context? If you look at it more like it's white and black, and you look at US history, can you not sit back and be like, maybe we shouldn't have done that. Maybe we shouldn't have committed genocide. And then in 2024, you're watching it live broadcast and your politicians do what? Kamala Harris says they have a right to defend themselves from fucking what, kids? With rocks? Are you serious? Are you fucking serious?
If South Africa is accusing you of apartheid and genocide,
South Africa. Literally racist. Literally hate.
Yeah.
Israel had a chance. Israel had offer
has had
after
so
offer
many chances,
after offer.
so many chances, and so many deals, and so many.
Even after this invasion in Lebanon, they have still stated, there has been people in the Arab community who have stated that if Israel just stops right now, just lays down their arms, stop trying to push into expanding territory, back down, go back to your original
Stop the genocide
territory, and agree to a two-state solution, they'll let it go. They'll let
Iran's
you survive.
trying to get back on the nuclear deal. They don't want to go to war.
But
the only aggressor is Israel.
So who's the problem here? Is it Palestine? Is it Lebanon? Is it Iran? Or is it Israel and the United States? The United States of Israel, because we cucked the fucking Netanyahu and it's bullshit. Vote for Jill Stein. She won't put up with this. She's not going to let this continue. You know who will let it continue? Kamala. Trump. Come on. This is from Mondowise. The United States and Israel set out to remake the Middle East again. The mood in Washington today is similar to 2003 when the neocons of the Bush administration sought to remake the Middle East. This time, a joint vision shared by Israel and the Biden-Harris administration seeks to remake the region in the West's vision. I have to throw Harris in there because people forget. People try to separate the two. Like, oh, no, when she's in office, she's going to magically do all these things she hasn't had any power to do or any say to do. She's not. It's Biden-Harris. It is the Biden-Harris administration. If she was going to do a fucking thing, if she was going to protect your reproductive rights, if she was going to protect children's rights, your right to work, your right to education, she would have done it by now. She's not going to do shit but give Israel more fucking money, more fucking weapons, so they can continue this stupid shit.
22 years ago, as the winds of war were gathering in Washington, there was a strong sense of not just rage, but overconfidence in the United States. The neoconservative movement was at the height of its influence both in and outside of government. The world had rallied around the United States and its invasion of Afghanistan in the wake of September 11th attacks, and they had not yet realized that the invasion force was already sinking into what would become a 22-year quagmire.
Quagmire? That's a very...
A catastrophe.
I'm sorry, but I'm just quite giggity. That's sorry.
The neocons argued that it was time to remake the Middle East according to the West's vision, ignoring the fact that the region's problems stemmed in large measure from post-colonial conditions that traced the roots back to the Allied powers' decision to draw the region's borders according to their colonial ambitions in the aftermath of World War I. They seized the opportunity to put their theories to the test.
Yeah, let's play with people's fucking lives because why not? Sorry. Let's just play with people's lives. Let's just decide that, you know what? Canada doesn't need to be there anymore. Let's rename it something else.
No, it's more like let's just impose all this stuff because we're white and they're not.
Pretty much.
We're
Maybe
Christians and they're not.
Most religions have committed genocide, and look what's happening now. They're committing a genocide, and they're using the excuse of religion when it doesn't have anything to do with religion.
I mean, there's genocide in the Bible. So.
But this gets you put in jail. This kind of violence gets you assassinated by the CIA and replaced with somebody else that they like better.
This gets you put in the Hague.
Like, what do you call that when they dispose the leader? Switch it to somebody else?
Regime change.
Yes, regime change. This kind of action deserves a regime change. Like, this is the one time the CIA should actually do it for the good.
They would never do. Iraq was the focal point of that test, but it was the entire region that was the laboratory for these mad scientist experiments. The repercussions of the disaster they brought to the region are felt to this day. The mood today in Washington is similar. This time, an attack on Israel is the excuse for the catalyst that has sparked a renewed ambition to reshape the Middle East. This time, according to a joint vision shared by the Israeli government of Benjamin Netanyahu and the administration of Joe Biden in the United States. Whether it's State Department mouthpiece Matthew Miller bragging that the United States was never interested in a diplomatic resolution of the assault on the Gaza Strip, or both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris calling the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah a measure of justice, while ignoring the hundreds of civilians Israel had killed in Beirut in the attack, triumphalism and hubris are the order of the day in Washington. That triumphalism is matched and surpassed in Israel. Netanyahu's assassination of much of Hezbollah's top leadership, including Nasrallah, has helped to shift attention away from Gaza, where Israel had destroyed much of the Strip, killed tens of thousands of innocents, but for all that blood has yet to defeat Hamas.
Because you can't defeat an idea.
Radical settler and former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett called on Israel to destroy Iran's nuclear reactors. Another former PM, the supposedly more rational Ehud Barak, cautioned Israel not to try to go to war with Iran until it secured the help it needs from the United States. The idea of de-escalation is invisible in this discourse. The mood in Israel and Washington betrays the reality behind Israel's genocidal program in Gaza. From October 7th to this moment, the Netanyahu government's sights were not set on Gaza or even the West Bank, but on Iran. The utter lack of value that Israel, the United States, and their European allies placed on Palestinian lives meant that these innumerable people in Gaza who have died directly from Israeli attacks and indirectly from disease, exposure, lack of clean water, malnutrition, starvation, and all the other effects of war have been sacrificed as an opening salvo in the latest attempt to remake the Middle East. Unfortunately, first Hezbollah and then Iran could only avoid the confrontation for so long. Hezbollah could not turn their backs on Hamas, although both they and Iran were apparently caught unaware when Hamas launched its attack on October 7th. Iran's strategy of patience and playing the long game may be the wiser course, but neither they nor Hezbollah could afford to be perceived as inactive in the face of wholesale slaughter Israel was unleashing on Gaza. The real shift that Iran might have underestimated in its calculations a year ago is the one in Washington. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris went further than any of their predecessors in refusing to restrain Israel to even the slightest degree. In the past, American presidents had always worked to keep Israel from embroiling the Middle East in a regional war that could drag the U.S. and other countries in. Donald Trump was something of an exception in his indulgence of Israel and recklessness in dealing with Iran, the assassination of Qasem Soleimani and the abrogation of the JCPOA being the most obvious examples, but he was too mercurial. But he was too unpredictable for Israel to be sure he would act as they wanted him to if provoked with a war with Iran. Biden and Harris moved the needle. He made it absolutely clear from the onset that he was backing Israel to the hilt. Every time Netanyahu tested the limits of Biden and Harris's tolerance, he found it limitless. Every time Netanyahu crossed a so-called red line of the Biden-Harris administration, he not only faced no consequences, he was rewarded with more money and weapons. Even while Netanyahu had worked to support Donald Trump in this election, Biden-Harris has remained steadfast in their complete devotion to Israel's program. The danger of combining that kind of deference to Israel with the Israeli far right's determination to wage a wide-scale war with no concern about the regional consequences cannot be overstated. This is a moment that dwarfs the American invasion of Iraq in 2003 for the potential upheaval it can cause in the region. While there have been regular reports of dissension throughout the executive branch, many of Biden and Harris's key advisors are fully on board with raising the stakes against Iran. The reactions we are seeing right now to the latest escalation demonstrate this. After Israel assassinated Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, Iran promised retaliation that never came. The most likely explanation is that Iran was biding its time, knowing it was not in a position of military strength and hoping that domestic American pressures might be heightened by the new Iranian president. Massoud demonstrated openness to reestablishing with the West. Unfortunately, Massoud's pragmatism, which given anti-Iranian hostility in the United States, was always going to be greeted with skepticism, is largely unknown to Americans as it has been ignored by most of our media. Instead, we get spectacles like the one we had during the vice presidential debate on Tuesday, where the very first question posed to the candidates was not how to diffuse regional tensions, but whether they would back an Israeli strike on Iranian nuclear facilities.
Are you guys just trying to end the entire world? Like, are we just trying to just go all out in a big fucking bang?
You guys just bored? World War III? Yeah.
If you're bored, play a mobile game. Kill fake troops.
Yeah.
Stop killing actual people. People, they're not animals, they're people.
The salviating over the prospect of war is not at all confined to the media. A report in Politico stated that Biden top advisor Brett McGurk and Amos Hochstein were pushing hard for a major attack on Lebanon and, by extension, Iran. According to Politico, behind the scenes, Hochstein and McGurk and other top U.S. national security officials are describing Israel's Lebanon operations as a history-defining moment, one that will reshape the Middle East for the better for years to come. The thinking goes, Israel has obliterated Hezbollah's top command structure in Lebanon, severely undercutting the group's capabilities and weakening Iran, which used Hezbollah as a proxy and power projector. The report suggests that this view has triumphed in the White House, and that expanding an operation against Hezbollah could offer an opportunity to reduce Iran's influence in Lebanon and the region. We need to be clear about where each side stands on this. While the Biden-Harris administration has insisted for the past year that they want to avoid a regional war, their actions have pushed the region toward one.
Reagan sent a letter to Israel and told them to knock it the fuck off, and you know what they did?
It was a phone call. He was like, what you're doing is a Holocaust in Lebanon, you better fucking stop. And he fucking stopped.
Ooh.
But it wasn't Netanyahu. It was someone else.
Nonetheless, you can tell that Iran, I don't want to say was making empty threats, but was more or less making it clear that, like, you're pushing for us to respond. You're getting closer to us. You're making it clear your intentions are to come to us. We just can't keep ignoring that.
To be sure, this was a risk Hezbollah took as well when they opened a northern front with Israel to help Hamas withstand the Israeli onslaught by trying to divide Israel's forces. Yet when push came to shove, Hezbollah recognized the threat Israel posed and was willing to compromise. Lebanon acting Foreign Minister Abdallah Abu Habib told CNN's Christine Amanpour that Hezbollah had agreed to the U.S.-France's proposal for a 21-day ceasefire shortly before Israel killed him. Habib is no Hezbollah mouthpiece. He is a longtime World Bank economist and former Lebanese ambassador to the United States. He made it clear to the Americans and Israelis knew that Hezbollah had agreed to the ceasefire. Iran, as well, has been trying to avoid escalation, but the Islamic Republic was facing criticism over its strategic patience and was in danger of seeming impotent in the face of Israeli aggression, while Hezbollah, Ansarallah, Hamas, and other smaller groups were taking action. After Nasrallah's assassination, Iran had to respond. Yet, even when it did, it had targeted Israeli military sites, and as it did in April, it warned the United States beforehand. This time around, Iran used high-quality missiles and gave the U.S. much less lead time to prepare themselves and the Israelis to defend against the missiles. There had been considerable secrecy under Israel's system of military censorship about the extent of the damage Iran might have done with the latest barrage. Iran had clearly stepped up its response, recognizing that both its inaction after Haniyeh's killing and its very restrained missile attack back in April had encouraged rather than deterred Israeli and American adventurism. Yet, they still made sure to minimize the response, hoping to avoid further escalation by the U.S. and Israel. Biden said on Wednesday that the United States did not support a strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. This isn't as much of a concession as it might sound.
We don't support it, but here's some weapons and money.
Iran's nuclear program is not concentrated in a single site, as Syria's was in 2007 or Iraq's in 1981. When Israel bombed those sites, Iran facilities are scattered throughout the country, some of them deep underground.
Oh, God. Of course they're deep underground. No offense about hiding things deep underground, but that's their whole excuse for blowing up neighborhoods. Even though, they can clearly do a precision strike. Look up where they killed the twin babies.
Yeah, Israel can conduct precision strikes, and they've shown us they could when they assassinated 2 twin-day-old babies.
4 day old? I think they were 4 days old?
Yep.
4 days old. 4 days. But they were Hezbollah or Hamas. They had
Hamas
guns.
Babies.
I think one of them had a grenade in their diaper. If Iran was doing this, where would the U.S. be at this point?
And probably striking Iran.
All up in arms, throwing a fit.
Yeah, we're a bunch of hypocrites. A strike at any of them is not going to cripple the program as a whole, but it certainly could entice Iran to speed up their nuclear development as much as they can. The more pertinent question is whether Israel will refrain from targeting the kind of civilian areas as they have in Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen. Extensive civilian harm would force a much stronger Iranian response. Or Israel might strike Iranian oil fields in hope of inflicting major damage to an Iranian economy that is already weak. If Israel does pursue that course, it raises the distinct possibility that Iran might strike at oil fields in Arab countries that are key to the American, Israeli, and European energy supply. Either of these scenarios significantly raises the likelihood of a major regional war. The other possibility is that Israel would settle for a token response, one that, like Iran's this week, demonstrates its capabilities, but does relatively little damage. This would be the most rational course, but the question is, with a license to shoot given to it by the Biden-Harris administration again, would Israel pursue a rational course?
Israel, there's nothing rational about Israel. Not even its existence is rational.
The people aren't rational.
The book told me it needs to be here. There's a book. It told me. I'm going to write a book that says you're not real.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Given the eagerness in which the Biden-Harris administration seems to be pressing forward with another doomed attempt to remake the Middle East, rationality seems like a pipe dream. Every time this has been tried, whether with the Sykes-Picot Agreement after World War I, the invasion of Iraq, or Israelis' attacks on Lebanon in the 70s and 80s, it had always ended in disaster and in planting the seeds of yet more conflict and bloodshed. There is no reason to believe this time would be any different.
It won't. Israel's not going to stop until Israel is stopped, and we need to stop.
We are the only
Israel.
ones that can stop Israel, I think. The U.S. is the only person that can stop Israel. And I'm not even sure if that's true anymore. It's like the United States of Israel, so it's like...
Well, Netanyahu said that with or without our help, he could do this whole thing on his own. So why don't we just let him show us that he can do it without our help? Let's stop giving him money and weapons, and let's see just how far he can get on his own. Iran is literally like, hey, I'm going to attack you because I need to show you that you've got to stop, but I'm giving you a heads up so you can prepare, you can move people, you can get ready, you can get your Iron Dome up. I just want to let you know, we have to show you our strength. We have to do an attack. You're killing hundreds of thousands of people. You're displacing millions of people. You're destroying areas that won't even be cleared out in our lifetime.
It's like a parent trying to deal with a angsty teenager or something. It's like, you should really think about de-escalating and not doing the shit and stop doing genocides maybe. And Israel's like, no, I want a genocide now.
I'm from the South, which means it's okay to spank your kids when necessary. Israel needs a hard ass spanking.
It needs knocked into next week.
Netanyahu, knocked into Netanyahu.
As Mama Maz used to say.
I just don't think, at this point in time, I don't think that Israel will stop unless they are stopped. I don't see them stopping on their own. Even if they were told that they get to keep all the territory that they've claimed so far, I just don't see them stopping. They had an agreement to stop for 21 days and then killed the literal person who they got the agreement with. They're not going, you can't trust them.
Yeah, they've never been a partner for peace.
You can't trust them.
This is the evidence. It's been
And anyone who is there in the Middle East who is hoping that there will be this kind of peace, understand that Israel lies. Don't believe them.
Oh, they know.
Don't get comfortable.
I'm sure. It's all about perspective.
You cannot oppress people and expect them not to fight back. It doesn't matter who you are, what group you are. It doesn't matter if this is also a working class type situation. If you're in the higher up, if you are the oppressor, you deserve to be knocked down by the oppressed.
This is from Gizmodo. Elon Musk's free Starlink for Hurricane Helene victims will cost at least $400 upon inspection. The offer of a free month of Starlink service seems to be the type of deal you might give to any new customer.
What initially got me on learning about this was somebody stating that Elon Musk is doing more for our people than our own government. Like, for example, you don't mention, like, for example, he's the one that sent the space shuttle up to get the astronauts because Boeing fucked shit up like they always do. Boeing didn't, make the capsule safe for them to return, not even to get there. That's why it took so long. And then finding out that, like, people don't have services during this time, which to me is still kind of seems off. Like, why do people not have service? Why don't they have satellite service? Why aren't they pinging off the towers? And my thought is it's not an accident. Just like I don't think that flooding in that area is a total accident either. I understand that why the flooding happened in North Carolina so bad was because of the rain, and then it hit a dam, and then it hit a dam, and then it hit a dam, and it was just a domino effect. But just to be a conspiracy theorist, throw out the idea that maybe somebody had sabotaged one of those dams. Maybe somebody had pushed for these things to happen. Maybe it has something to do with the uranium. As Elon Musk likes to do whenever disaster hits somewhere in the world, Hurricane Helene was another opportunity to show off his generosity and make himself part of the news. This time, Musk made headlines with a promise that SpaceX Starlink would be free for 30 days to help in places where fiber and cellular infrastructure might have been knocked offline. More than 200 people have been identified as dead in the disaster. But the catch is that it's really not free at all. It really looks like not much more than a glorified new customer promotion. For one, anyone interested in taking up the offer still has to pay approximately $400 for the dish itself, including shipping and tax. And they're getting automatically enrolled into a $120 per month contract when the free month ends. There's other problems with Musk's offer. The Register has published a story investigating the free Starlink deal and traveled to Boone, North Carolina to see how it's been received by locals. They interviewed a resident named Kenny Bauman, who wasn't thrilled. He noted that many communities have been turned into rubble by the hurricane, and if UPS can drive the roads to deliver someone a Starlink dish, wherever they live probably isn't damaged too severely. And considering that the Starlink's delivery time is quoted as 2 to 3 weeks, broadband or cellular service could be restored for these folks by then, in which case the space-based satellite services wouldn't even be necessary. There's also a comical logistic issue pointed out by the Register. You need to find a data connection to even order and activate the Starlink deal in the first place. And if you can get enough cellular signal to sign up now, you might wonder why you would wait weeks to be pulled into a paid-for satellite service. I could connect to an active webpage in the middle of nowhere, said Nicole Hemsmith Prickett, an editor at the Register, who was sent out to a damaged community to try and order Starlink. The offer is geofenced, which really says, hey, data connectivity could actually be working again, but not for you with Starlink unless you pony up. It was insult to injury for many here who thought free internet space magic was real. It's not even to mention that many people in affected areas are without the power needed for a Starlink dish. They would need a generator, which is not something people commonly own. A month of free Starlink service is great and certainly better than nothing, especially if you already had Starlink. Except again, the register found that pre-existing customers have to reach out to customer service and hope that they'll be granted a 30-day waiver eventually. Customers on Starlink subreddit often complain that the company's customer service is painfully slow. To be sure, Musk's Starlink has been majorly helpful in the war-torn Ukraine, where he gave the army completely free service and dishes. Ukrainians have said Starlink has been crucial for maintaining communications on the battlefield and controlling drones where traditional infrastructure has been destroyed. But even there, he reportedly used his unilateral control to block service in Crimea and eventually pushed the US government to start paying the bill. The Starlink offer at least hasn't caused the circus that some of his previous offers did to distract from getting people the help that they needed, like the DIY submarine intended to recover the boys trapped in the cave in Thailand, or the ventilators he donated early on in COVID that actually weren't ventilators. These offers always seem great on the surface until you exercise even a little scrutiny. This is from The Southerner. Aaron Bushnell, The Consequences of American Complacency.
It's been almost 3 months since Aaron Bushnell shocked the world in an unprecedented act of self-immolation outside the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. While on a live Twitch stream, he declared, "I'm an active duty member of the United States Air Force, and I will no longer be complicit in genocide. I'm about to engage in an extreme act of protest, but compared to what people have been experiencing in Palestine at the hands of their colonizers, it's not extreme at all." He then proceeded to douse himself in a flammable liquid and set himself ablaze in the embassy driveway. As this unfolded, a police officer shouted at him, "Get on the ground, you fucker. Get on the ground." Through unimaginable suffering, Bushnell unmistakably screamed, "Free Palestine," 5 times before collapsing. At this point, 2 uniformed officers, one equipped with a fire extinguisher and the other a handgun, ran into frame. One officer extinguished the fire while the other kept his weapon aimed at Bushnell's motionless, flaming body. Critics of Bushnell will attribute his actions to being purely a product of mental illness, when in fact they were completely congruent with his anti-imperialist political convictions. He committed to sacrificing himself for a cause he believed in, liberating Palestine, just as Arab resistance fighters have done for decades. Mental illness implies detachment from reality. The final statements made by Bushnell, however, illustrate a man so overwhelmed by a keen awareness of his country's support for Israel's atrocities that he felt no choice but to protest in one of the most alarming ways imaginable. Bushnell burned himself alive to call attention to the Palestinians who die every day as martyrs defending the occupation of their land, and alleging mental illness to detract from his motivations is insidious at best and deplorable at worst. On a trip to Washington, D.C. on April 2nd, I visited the Israeli embassy to see how Bushnell's memory was being honored and what else was being done to protest the Israel-Hamas war. Despite it being an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, the scene that day was unbelievable. Demonstrations outside the embassy could be heard before they were seen. 20 to 30 bullhorns playing distinct sirens surrounded the premises, audible from blocks away. Each horn was cycling through different patterns and decibels, making them impossible to tune out. Walking towards the increasingly deafening sirens, most nearby houses displayed either an Israeli or Palestinian flag. Despite this obvious tension, people were carrying on as normal, walking their dogs and picking up their kids from the bus stop. Stepping foot on the embassy grounds, even with proper ear protection, it was impossible to escape the abrasive display. I was confronted with dozens of pictures of starved and dismembered corpses of women, children, and infants. Starting on the northwest corner of the property and walking around the corner towards the driveway where Bushnell self-immolated, remnants of his memory were in every step I took. Artwork was displayed every few feet, praising him as a heroic symbol of the Intifada. 3 protesters were present, an older woman and a young couple. They were circling the block shouting "cowards" through a bullhorn to those leaving the embassy, but were unable to approach them due to extensive security. The people leaving and the security guards escorting them were all being protected by anonymity of ski masks and the defense of the Secret Service. Parked across the street were 5 Secret Service guards with 10 officers, rifles across their chests. closely monitoring the protesters. They were mostly concentrated near the driveway, likely concerned with stopping anyone trying to copy Bushnell. The image of Israeli affairs being conducted in a fortified brick building protected by the American government and Palestinians operating out of tents pitched on land they don't own, so distraught from the atrocities done to their people that all they can do to carry on is just shout over the fence at a building which doesn't recognize their existence, was an image so ironic it was almost absurd. Finally, arriving at the driveway, I was surprised to see that it was the only area completely unobstructed. However, upon further inspection, a haunting detail presented itself. One spot on the light gray pavement was black, charred by Bushnell's burning body. Bushnell stated in his will that I wish for my remains to be cremated. I do not wish for my ashes to be scattered or my remains to be buried, as my body does not belong anywhere in this world. If a time comes when Palestinians regain control of their land, and if the people native to that land would be open to the possibility, I would love for my ashes to be scattered in a free Palestine. It was heartbreaking to stare down at that black patch of pavement, the last physical evidence of his memory, and surmise that he may never have that final wish fulfilled. The only solace that can be found is in knowing that he at least didn't have to continue living so consumed by guilt, the kind of guilt we all should feel seeing children in Washington looking for their parents at the bus stop, while children in Palestine are looking for their parents under the rubble of their demolished neighborhoods. As Bushnell put in his final letter to his family, the machine demands blood, none of this is fair. Bushnell wanted the extremity of his actions to combat the downplayed narratives across network news broadcasts. He wanted America to witness his protests and feel a level of discomfort that could not be achieved through the mainstream media. I challenge anyone to watch his video in its entirety, or look down at that soot-stained driveway, and still ignore the affront to humanity that is the Palestinian genocide. As long as we honor his sacrifice by continually educating ourselves about what's happening in Palestine from independent sources, Bushnell's death will not be in vain.